by a promise-making and a promise-keeping God, you can move into your future with confidence. If there is someone here in our midst this morning who feels that your future is now doomed because of something that has happened in the past, something outside of your control, or something that you have created of your own folly, out of your own folly and stupidity, and you wonder if there is any more hope for the future, the Christmas message is a message that tells you you can move forward despite that, because God is in control. That is the hope of the Advent. That is the message of that child, that you can begin again. You can start all over. You can move beyond. God's purposes can never be defeated. You can go beyond. And I'm wondering this morning if there is someone who is just longing and yearning to move beyond. If it is a trouble that you have brought upon yourself, there needs to be repentance. There needs to be a turning away from. God knows our hearts. He knows how self-serving we are. We can fool others. We can fool church leaders. They are the easiest to fool anyway. You come with any semblance of penitence and the church leaders will all be praying for you and thanking God. But God sees the hearts. God sees into your heart. And He knows if you are sincere. He knows if there is a real turning away from inside of your heart. If there is no turning truly on the inside of your heart, you are not going to persuade God to do anything for you inside of your heart. You have to come with sincerity. You have to come with true penitence. And God knows how true we are in our penitence. You can say all the right words. Those of us who are best trained in language will tell you all of the correct words in the correct situations. And we can fool everybody and anybody. But you cannot fool God. Because God does not look at the words of our heart, words of our mouth. He looks at the language of our heart. He sees on the inside. Thirdly and finally, the message this Christmas. First message, God's purposes can never be defeated. Nothing can thwart God's purposes. Nothing can derail God's agenda and God's program in this world. This world, if it is intent on blowing up itself, can never blow up God's plans. So you go out in confidence. You don't cower in fear. But you go out believing that God is in control. Secondly, the message of Christmas is a message that you can move beyond. You can move beyond your own failures. You can move beyond your own fears. You can move outside of your own captivity, outside of your own prison. What is it that captures you today? What is it that imprisons you today? The message of Christmas reminds us that we can move beyond it. That you do not need to be subject to captivity. Is a message to old Israel. It's a message to the new people here in Singapore today as well. You can move beyond your captivity. The third thing and the final thing the message of Christmas tells us is we have to be prepared. We have to be prepared. Just as the message of hope anticipates the coming of Christ at that first Christmas. The first Advent looks forward towards the second coming of Jesus. No celebration of Christmas is ever complete until we take a look at the basis of our hope. And the basis of our hope is not just something in the past. The first Christmas reminds us, promises us that there will come a time when Jesus will return, now no longer as a helpless child in a manger, but as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. That is what all Christmases must point towards. The star of Christmas points the shepherds and all of the worshippers in that first century to the manger. But it is the baby Jesus that points us to the future when he shall return as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. The first advent looks forward to the second coming. It is embedded in the human psyche that the world as we know it today is headed towards some cataclysmic end, some grand explosion. Look at all of the movie lines that's supposed to be futuristic. It's always talking about some explosive end this world will come to. There will be a day of reckoning when all of the injustices in life will be righted, when evil shall be punished, when righteousness shall prevail. It is embedded in the human psyche. This is the evidence that God made us. That God has put eternity into our hearts, as the scriptures remind us. And one evidence of that is all of us, all of humanity. We all know that somehow in our distant future, some of us will like to think it's nearer than we can care to imagine. That somewhere in our future there will be an explosive end. And you see these notions. You see all of these notions given expression in the movies, in all of our movies, and even in Star Wars. It is Jesus who reminds us in Luke 21 that there will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. On the earth, nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and the tossing of the sea. Men will faint from terror, apprehensive of what is coming onto the world, for the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time you will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. When these things begin to take place, stand up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. What will give our world fears and tremors must give us as children of God confidence that what God has promised is now being brought to bear upon reality. When the world is fearful, oh, look at all these signs, and there are no shortages of all these fear-mongering, even amongst Christians. Have you seen the blood moon? Have you seen the cold moon? It's like, now wait a minute, make up your mind, is it hot or is it cold? And then we stir up fear. But the fear only needs to be in the hearts of those who are not right with God. All of this fear must bring that sense of hope within us. Whatever the fear-mongering is out in the world, the confidence must be in the heart of the believer. The one who promised he will come again is drawing near. He is coming closer. And it should fill us with a sense of hope. Really? The world will collapse? Let's go out and celebrate. Why? Because God who made this promise is keeping his promise. He shall return. When something tumultuous is going to happen on earth, you know, there is always a stirring in the animals. Before an earthquake, before a tsunami, who are the first ones to know it? Animals. And so you have all these prophets of doom who tell you that these things are coming. Look closer at them. What animals do they look like? When something seismic is going to happen, it is first registered in the depths of the human heart. You know it. Somehow, all of humanity, it doesn't matter who you talk to, what religions they profess, or whether how academic they are, how professional they are. It does not matter. Any of these. As long as you can get them to a place where they trust you with the things in their heart, they will tell you there is a deep fear that something cataclysmic is going to happen. If you don't believe it, just look at the storylines of all of the current movies. The ones that are winning the awards, the ones that are getting the widest acclaim. They're all saying the same thing. That is a stirring in the heart. With all of the tragedies at hand, there must be something beyond. What is all of this going to lead to? That movie makers, novel writers, music composers will tell them to us. They are our prophets. When our fears and anticipations are realized, instead of being apprehensive and fainting from terror, we are to stand up and lift up our heads because our redemption is drawing near. Because our redemption is drawing near. My friends, you and I are to encourage one another to hope for that final redemption. And at Christmas time, this is the best time to remind our world that Christmas is possible only because He who made that promise eons ago fulfilled that promise in the person of Jesus. And the one who fulfilled His promises in the person of Jesus also made the promise that He shall come again. Just as Jesus became a reality at that first Christmas, Jesus coming back as King of Kings and Lord of Lords shall also be a reality. Every Christmas we look forward to that reality. And because we look forward to that reality, we come out to our redemption. When you are captive and when you are freed, you don't cower in fear of your rescuers. You go out in glee and you embrace, no matter how stinking you are from your captivity, you embrace the people who've set you free. The people who've redeemed you. So when the world tells us that this is a terrible time to live, these are all signs that He who made that promise He shall come again will be keeping His promise. These are all reminders, the ticking of the clock, if you will, to the grand finale. And we live in anticipation of that. I'll tell you who are those who live in fear. Those who live in fear are those who for this moment say, you know something? I can mess around with God's requirements. You know something? God promises destruction, but that's so far away. All it takes for me is 1 second to repent and then I will be forgiven and I will be scot-free. I can get whatever I want and design for myself here on this earth. I don't care who I cheat. I don't care who I mess up, because in the end, at the right moment, I will ask for forgiveness and all will be solved. It's a very human mentality that we want our cake and eat it as well. But that's not a mentality that we see in the scriptures. It is for those who are anticipating the coming of the King. It is for those who live by the principles of the King, who live by the principles of Jesus, the Jesus who was a babe in a manger, so that we can reap the results of the Jesus who returns as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. We are to encourage each other in the meanwhile. We don't have to cower in fear. We don't have to take advantage of one another. We don't have to lie. We don't have to cheat in order to get ahead so that we can be forgiven at the end. You want this and that at the same time. It does not work. It just does not. You have to make a decision today. Whether you are a child of God, inviting the Jesus who came at that first Christmas into your heart, so that the Jesus who comes that second time can welcome you into His home.